lovely to meet you all, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk with you about the Web3 and how this new era of internet will impact influencer marketing. Here we go. So as we start talking about the Web3, I think we all know that Web3 is all about, is a new version of the internet, and how Web3 would decentralize and get the power to creators, and how creators created content and share content. So before we type into the Web3 in more in-depth, let's look a little bit about history when we have the Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3. So Web 1 was all about, as you all know, Yahoo and email was all about static content. When we moved into the Web 2, we're talking about e-commerce, search engine, and then of course social media, the rise of platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So on Web 2, everything is much more concentrated on tech companies and social media, and Web 3 is coming to change completely the game. So Web 3 is the vision of the future of internet that will reshape the way we engage on social, that will reshape the way we created content, and will reshape the way we engage with consumer. This will, of course, create what we talk about Web3 is decentralization. So Web3 will be much more interactive, much more intelligent. Anyone will be able to share content, to share information. We will no longer need to be attached to a brand, to a company in order to do that. So that said, at Web3, we also change the way we look into the KPIs. Where I'm going to be talking today as well. So it will be much more about how we create engagement and how we create attention into the Web3. So here is I love this slide because it gives us, an overview of the ecosystem of the Web3. So what does the ecosystem looks like? So everyone thinks that Web3 is only about metaverse, but Web3 is beyond metaverse. So Web3, we talk about NFTs, we talk about how social media platform will actually have to boost and create that ownership back to the creators. But Web3, when you think about gaming is already leading this transformation for a while, right? So brands are connecting already within the virtual space when it comes to, to gaming. They are transforming the gamers, the way brands connect with consumers, the way brands create community within the gaming platform. So of course, metaverse will be a key onto this new Web3, because metaverse, we actually take consumers to a virtual space and move them from, from real spaces into the virtual space, where consumers will be able to have a personalized experience into there. So of course, when you talk about social media, they will have to embrace the new change, and we're already seeing Instagram talking about testing NFT. We're seeing the platforms to give this monetization options for the creators within the platform. This is something that I've loved, and I'm very excited about how the Web3 will change the new creative economy. We've been talking about creative economy for a while now, but the Web3 will be all about the creators, will be all about the influencer. We're giving the power to them, right? When we talk about Web3 and we talk about decentralization, is because now creators, they will have the freedom to create content, and NFT will be, it's already there. Like I said, will be, actually is already happening. So the NFT element will give that power to the creator to continue to monetize from their content in a more longevity way, right? So that will give the power of royalties. We're going to be talking a lot on Web3. So how the influencers, we no longer will just receive their fee to create a content on behalf of the brand one-off, but how their content will live when it comes to royalty and get them to be monetized for their content for the long term. Here is, of course, when you talk about Web3, we will see that influencer marketing will be hugely impacted. So we will have to reconsider the way we create a strategy for influencer marketing. So great stats here for us to see that this is already changing, and then influencers are already typing into the Web3. So 85% of influencers have played with virtual worlds games like Minecraft and Fortnite. 51% of influencers are actively considers a way to make money into the metaverse space. And then this fact that I love, because it's not about the influencers, but it's actually about the consumers and the audience, that 58% of users are already at least have one virtual avatar within their community on any platform when it comes to virtual space. So virtual influencers that has over 1 million followers, this is a stats from a platform called Hype Auditor, they have 3 times more engagement rate than a normal influencer, just for us to understand the power of the avatar and the power of the virtual influencer we have on the Web3. And we, as we work with a lot of, different clients and brands, one question that's always come from them is, when this change will start happening? So it's not when the change will start happening. The change is already here. It's already happening as for now. Change is already happening, and there's a lot of brands and a lot of companies that are already ahead of the game when it comes to create virtual experience and hiring experience on virtual and physical space. I love this example that we have here on the slide about Coca-Cola, what they have recently done. So they launched a new flavor, and they mix the virtual with the real in a very intelligent way, where all the consumers that were buying the new flavor of Coca-Cola, on the can, they would have a scan that they could use that QR code to receive a token to join the virtual space of Coca-Cola, where they will have access to a concert, where they will be able to see a concert of a famous artist and singing 3 songs. That was a huge success, and it was a huge case study for them, because they managed to blend the both worlds and getting the results, the engagement, the conversion, and get the loyalty of the consumers to educate and then to come to this virtual space. As I said, with the Web3, as we are marketeers, we need to understand what is next when it comes to the influencer marketing, because it will have a massive impact on the way we create a strategy. So Web3 is all about, when it comes to product discovery, how this product discovery will happen within the virtual space. So gaming is a great example here of product discovery. That key 3 elements for product discovery in the game space is advertising, entertainment, and community building. So brands will have to type on these 3 key elements. So, and what is the value that brands are bringing to this community when it comes to virtual space? So it's so important for brands to not want to jump into the Web3 on the virtual space thinking about conversion, thinking about results. They have to think differently. They will have to think of how I'm going to create value to that community on the Web3. How I'm going to create experience within the space that I'm going to engage this community and get them to be loyal to my brand. So it's not about coming to the Web3 thinking that brands want conversion and want results. We're going to have to change the mindset here. Of course, campaigns, when we put strategies together, we'll have to think beyond social media. It's where the complexity for marketeers will start this year. Because now when we do influencer marketing strategy, we think about social platform, right? We think about how we're going to create content for that brand on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter, and in all the platforms on social. But when it comes to the Web3 strategy, we'll have to combine social platform, but also virtual space, which is the metaverse, which is the gaming. So, and how to blend that strategy that will combine the real with the virtual. And then, of course, the metrics, the KPIs will change, because how we measure results today is based on impressions, is based on views, in likes and comments. when we go beyond social media, we are changing the way we actually measure results, right? So the most important thing when it comes to Web3 on metrics is not about just the views, but actually it's about the average time view that the consumer, your audience, is actually staying with your content, like live streaming, for example, right? It's so important to understand the average time consumers stay watching your live, much more the number of views that we're actually watching their live streaming. Engagement is key. This is the metric of Web3. This is the future, and as this is now, engagement is going to be the most important metric for brands to look into the Web3. And of course, sentiment analysis. Nowadays, sometimes we don't consider much sentiment analysis when we're analyzing results, but when we move to Web3, sentiment analysis will be key to understand behavior, to understand attitude of this new generation. So the product placement goes virtual as well, right? Within the new, Web3. So brands will also have to blend product placement on physical and virtual. And this is going to be, or this is already being, a challenge for brands. How you do the product placement on both virtual and physical space. So creators will play a huge role on supporting the brands, on educating them to actually join and helping them to blend that product placement on these two, on these two words. So there's a great example that I loved here of, again, for a brand called Ciate London. It's a cosmetics brand. And they recently did a brilliant strategy of combined a product placement to the two words. So they've launched a new collection of cosmetic, and they type into the phygital, right? So phygital NFT. So they created 4 pieces of NFT with their new 4 products, and they sold that between $1,000 to $10,000, and they sold out immediately. But the great thing about that strategy is that the consumer that actually bought the phygital of their NFT, they actually not just receive the NFT, the phygital, and the assets belong to this consumer, but they also receive at home the physical product in a beautiful, very innovative, and very high-tech packaging that gave them the both experience of the digital and the physical. And this is how a strategy was going to have to look like in the future, how you blended both product placement where you have the physical and the virtual space. Then the target, right? So target audience, and I love this term, it's gonna become omni-audience, right? So we talk about omni-channel when you're putting strategies together, but now we're gonna have to think omni-channel, but also omni-audience. And what is that? It's because we are no longer be only typing to direct to consumer. We're also gonna have to type into directed to avatar. And that is going to be a great, challenge, but also an excitement for us to explore on how to understand avatars, because digital stores, they will mimic the physical stores, right? But the physical stores will also mimic the digital stores. And brands will have to create products that serves the real consumer, but also that serves the avatar. And what is the challenge here for us as a marketeers and for brands is like, we're not gonna have one avatar on the virtual space. We can have so many different identities in there, right? So I can have 5 avatars and I can behave and have different attitudes within my virtual space. So how the brands will have to understand and create products that will serve all their audience. As I mentioned before, social media, right? Influencer marketing is, nowadays we use a lot of social media to create content for brands. But now with the Web3, not just brands will have to, to reinvent and to rethink on the way they do strategy, but also the social platform will have to embrace this new Web3. Instagram, as you all probably have read that, they are already typing into Web3 and they are testing NFT within the platform. So they are onboarding and doing some tests one of the tests they're doing is with Gary Vee, where they're trying to understand how they will create this NFT space within the platform to actually give that power of monetization for influencers. So Web3 is influencer marketing strategy. We start repositioning it on the co-creation and add it on. It will be a fundamental process when it comes to influencer marketing in Web3. So on Web 2, co-creation is already something that is so important, and we've been seeing a lot of brands doing, special collaboration with influencer, creating collection with influencer. This is already a co-creation space when it comes to, working with combining creators and brands. But on Web 3, co-creation is going to be a must. And why? Because both brands and creators will help each other to actually onboard consumers into the virtual space. They will help it together to actually educate consumers to navigate into this virtual space. So they need to together create experience that will add value to this consumer to feel engaged to join this virtual space. And working together and co-created together, they will be able to understand how to engage this new generation to the virtual space, and also start creating community building within the virtual space. So co-creation is going to be so important in Web3 because, yes, we're giving the power to the creators, for sure, but creators, in order to, to build the community and create a loyal community that will engage with innovative experience, they will have to collaborate with brands. So we are talking about the Web3 and the new era of influencer marketing. So what is this going to be changing when it comes to the customer journey? As I mentioned, we're going to have to change our mindset. So the avatar journey will have to be looking into it, as well as the real consumer in the physical store. So as I mentioned, we're going to have multiple avatars. That means we're going to have multiple behaviors within the virtual space. And how are we going to track that? How are we going to track the multiple behaviors? How are we going to track the multiple attitudes that they will have into the virtual space? So this is the questions that we will have to have platform that's going to enable us to do that. Gaming, we have to keep an eye on gaming because they're already tracking behavior of their community because they've been doing that for a long time. So a good way of starting is actually keeping an eye on how gamers are doing and how their behavior is in the virtual space to give us the power to actually understand how can we track the behaviors of avatar, because we're not talking about demographic anymore, right? So demographic will no longer be, a metric for us to understand our consumers. KPIs will change. Of course, KPIs will change because today we look into vanity metrics, impressions and views and likes and comments. So that's not going to be the same KPIs when it comes to Web3, when it comes to virtual space. So there will be more touch points, right? How many touch points are we going to have on Web3? We're going to have metaverse, we're going to have games, we're going to have the NFTs, we're going to have the blockchains. How are we going to track all of that? It's not going to be the same, but engagement, as I mentioned before, will be the key. So KPI will be hybrid, right? So virtual and physical. So we will need to have, in the future, the very near future, platforms that's going to enable us because there's going to be so many touch points. And in order for us to understand investment and understand what is actually engaging, we're going to have multiple different KPIs to look into. And then one thing that I really wanted to type is into the meta relationship, because our relationship with creators will change, because now we're talking about this new term that's called meta relationship. So how this will impact audience behave and how this audience will react to the content and come from brands and influencers will be super important. So influencer strategy will have to consider avatars. But in order for brands to consider avatars into their influencer marketing, we will have to understand if the avatar shares the same values and share the same ethical of brands. It's like nowadays, when we are working with brands and influencers, we also wanted to understand if the brand shares the same value as the influencer and vice versa. We're going to have to do the same with the avatar, right? So because they will have to share the same values and will have to share, the same philosophy for them to engage with each other. And brands will need to engage with the avatars because together they will create an environment with the virtual space that is more diverse and is more inclusive, because it's so important as we go to the Web3 that the same, concern that we have on the physical, the physical space and the physical and social media, that we want to create platforms that are inclusive, that are diverse, that people has respected for each other. We're going to have to create the same environment when it comes to the Web3. So for that, the co-creation, as I mentioned before, will be a key element for brands and influencers together create the safe space within the Web3. So I think I'm just on time. So key takeaways here is Web3 is still in development, right? So a lot of change will still happening. We still will see a lot of things evolving when it comes to the Web3. Make sure that you're embracing it, because I know sometimes we go like, shall I embrace the Web3? Is there a lot of changes? Metaverse is the NFT. There is no way back. We need to embrace it. So influencers, they will, and they are the key partners for the Web3. They will be the ones that's going to be educating. They will be the ones that have the power to accelerate the Web3. And that's all from me today. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to me. Thank you so much.